Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven, WNHH Radio. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the scenes on the stories that make New Haven tick. Mayor Tony Harp is always behind the scenes and in front as the mayor of New Haven. Morning and nights, he's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. If you have a question for the mayor and you're not Bob, instead of calling, feel free to pop it up on our Facebook page, the New Haven Independent Facebook page. You'll see the video there. And thanks to Gateway Community College, already Haji Chadabashulu gives a wave hello. Good morning. And I didn't hear you there. Mayor Harp, is your mic on?
I think it is.
All right.
I got it.
And thanks to Gateway Community College and Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. Good morning, Mayor Harp.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. It's nice to see you on Monday morning.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Hey, some of us are just getting going slowly, but you have already been out and around town. I heard a rumor that you were at the University of New Haven. You were not there to go to Econ 101 or Intro to Poli-Sci. What were you doing there?
There was an awards ceremony for the Markle Symposium that they have every year. I think this is the 27th annual. And our police department and our fire department, as well as AMR, received community services awards from that organization because of the great work that they did when we had the K2 overdoses on the green.
Right, we had over 100, like 120 in 2 or 3 days. Incidents of overdoses, though, it was something like 47 people of a bad batch of K2. Do you remember who some of the people were or what the jobs were honored this morning?
Well, it was for the entire police department, and Assistant Chief Reyes was there for them, and then it was for the entire fire department, and Chief Austin was there. And what they basically said was the people that they deployed on the green, it didn't include our PSAP, but they were certainly a part of it.
That's the 911 dispenser.
Right, and our health department. But and it was all coordinated through our Deputy Director of Emergency Services, Rick Fontana. And basically they were saying that we had done really yeoman's work for the work that we did over those 36 hours.
Yeah, I remember talking to some of the folks. They were, all of a sudden, all these people are dropping. You don't know why. And there's all this pressure, and you don't get much of a break. And it's upsetting because some of the people you saw who passed out, you sent to the hospital, come right back and pass out again. You remember that whole thing was going on. And they did a great job. I remember the fire department was rotating them a little more from duty to give them a little break from the bench and going other people in. Any thoughts in retrospect now about that incident? We haven't had another incident like it recently. I don't know why that is. I mean, I'm glad that is. Any thoughts on emergency response in the future, like triaging on site and things like that?
Well, I think that one of the things that our emergency apparatus does is they do tabletop demonstrations and they do workshops. By that, they sort of work through various scenarios. They do some every 6 months with the state and the federal government, but they also work through scenarios among each other. And so the fact that we've been doing this work, that we've planned for it, that we've executed trial runs, means that we're really prepared if some awful thing happens in our city. And this really made me understand how very prepared we are. There have been other places where there have been fewer overdoses and people have died, and no one died in New Haven.
Yeah.
And as they pointed out today, there have been other overdoses, not as big as over 100, but there have been other overdoses, and the same team has been able to save lives and get in there and get people to our hospitals. I guess that's the other partner that we didn't talk about, and that's Yale New Haven Hospital, and how they are always poised to work with us and to assure that they do all they can to save lives. But we get them there. We get them there ready to for the medical intervention.
They were the first responders. They saved the lives. And then when that all happened in August, it was crisis mode.
It was
the whole world was watching. You had to think about how we're going to get through the next 3 days. Since then, you've been looking at broader lessons about avoiding this in the future, both about how you deal with the addiction challenges as well as how the Greens should run.
Right.
So what's the latest on some of those fronts?
So I've been working with the Commissioner of Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, Commissioner Delphin Rittman, and she's been working with her staff to think about what are the services that this shows we need to have. Where are the service gaps? We've got a lot of service providers in New Haven doing a lot of wonderful things, but there are some gaps, and her professional team identified a couple of gaps. One, there really probably should be a street psychiatrist, not a psychologist, but or a social worker, but a street psychiatrist. She had already given us 2 social workers, and the commitment is that they will be more visible on the green. Then there,
That Phil from Hill Health Center, Phil Costello.
well, no, these people are from
The State Department.
from the Columbus House. No, Columbus
Oh.
House has the contract, and so there are two MSWs that are there that will be dedicated to the green and work with folks on the green. And the other thought is to have recovery coaches. It's a new position that I really had just begun to learn about, and it's these are people that have been successful with their dealing with their substance problem, and so they're stationed oftentimes in our emergency rooms. We'll be able to have some on the green as well, but they can coach people and help people get
I got
into
through it. Here's how you go through it.
Yeah, and
So-
here's how I help you. Nobody wants to be addicted if you think about it.
So, Mayor Harp, does that mean there is a specific street psychiatrist whom the state is sending to assign to the green, and specific recovery coaches the state is sending to be at the
Yes.
green?
We're going to get those positions.
So
for
when
New
is that
Haven.
happening, you think?
They're in the process of setting it all up. I think they have to go through a period to think about who they contract through, because often they don't provide the services
Mhm.
themselves, but they use contracting organizations. So I'm thinking that they'll go through, they have contracts with the department, with CMHC, and they also, as I mentioned before, have contracts with Columbus House. So it's possible that they will do that, and they have a way to have contracts with our emergency department. And so I think that they're working out how to utilize those contracts with existing providers
Mhm.
to get those people on board.
All right. And then there was also talk about the green. So you've talked to the proprietors of the green who own and are responsible for that space. They've started having events where they get different kinds of music and smaller performances there to get more people on the green. Has that been effective? Is that part of some larger strategy?
Well, I think that that's one of the things that they have been doing. What we've been doing, though, is making sure that there is more police presence on the green, so that we have intensified our walking beats on the green. That at any given point in time, there are at least 6 officers somewhere between the upper and the lower green, just there
Really?
in case
There
there
are
are
6
problems.
hours, like 24/7 at the green?
No, not 24/7. Because most everybody leaves the green around 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's really probably up to 7 o'clock that you're going to see folks walking that green in uniform.
Wow.
And I think that's helped. I noticed a difference. I drive by there, I'm sure you do too. And if you'll notice, there aren't as many people.
I did notice.
I know. I don't think you drive by there. You
I do
actually
walk by. I walk by.
Yeah.
And then App Foundation has been in conversations with you guys about how to handle some of the problems. Your idea that I found most interesting, Mayor Hart, was trying to change state law to allow individual prescribers at their offices to administer methadone rather than have one big facility like that. What's the latest with the App Foundation?
Well, they have been working with our community services administrator on issues, and I think at least once or twice a week he takes a drive by on Congress Avenue to see whether or not the security that they've promised to have out there is there, whether or not the police officers that are supposed to be out there are out there. And so it's getting really, really cold, and the fact that so many people still wait outside is is problematic, but they have kept to their promise to increase the security there and have made sure that they've hired our police officers as well. So I think that things are improving slowly, but they are improving.
And then you had another idea I found very interesting, which was to have a drop-in center sort of around the corner, like within a couple block or two of the green, where because some of those KT people didn't need to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you need to get some hospital because they're going to die. Sometimes they just need to lie in a bed where there's social workers and other help available. Any update on that?
Well, there's really no update, but what we had hoped to do is right now at St. James, St. Paul, St. James, we have breakfast that is available.
You were covering both your bases there because I always forget which saint goes first, too.
Me too.
You did cover your bases, though. You get the vote.
Okay.
I hope they're still in New Haven for your sake.
And so the Sunrise Cafe that is operated by Liberty Services operates until 11:30, and so there's a thought that if we can find the resources, and I believe our community services administrator is looking at this as to whether or not we can expand the time that people could be there.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah. So, I think that we were thinking because other places serve lunch, that it is better just to have them move into those places that serve lunch, and oftentimes they don't actually get there. So.
And Bob, we're going to get to you. I'm just going to remind people that thanks for waiting patiently. You've been listening to Mayor Monday. You can continue to hear it on WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenpenn.org. Bob, you're on with Mayor Harp.
Yes. Hello, Mayor. How are you today?
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Doing okay. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Bob. Nice to hear your voice.
I'm going to mention something I just read on social media. And
Must be
it's
true,
about
then.
Wilbercross High School. I don't know if you know about it, but there's an increased police presence today, Mayor.
Yes.
Over a threat that was made on social media. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Well, all I can say is that there was a threat that was made on social media. We are taking it very seriously. It wasn't made by the person who they fear might do some damage there. It was made by someone else. I spoke to our assistant chief who told me that they were looking into that to see, but in the meantime, to see how credible it is. But in the meantime, there is increased security, more central office staff, more police presence there, and in our high school.
Was somebody threatening to blow up the place or something?
Yeah, someone was threatening to do some damage over there.
I mean, like a Columbine type thing?
It sounded like it, yeah.
Ooh.
And so.
Wow.
And so someone who was a little unhappy with things, but
was it?
But we don't know we don't know for sure if that's the fact. We're investigating.
Are schools being let out early today?
No.
Being let out?
I don't believe so.
Not.
But what an era we live in, huh?
No, I mean you have to take all of these things very seriously. So, all of the students are safe. We are working to make sure that everyone is safe there, and we're in the meantime looking into the allegations that were made on social media.
Speaking of blowing up, I also heard recently, maybe within the last few days, one of these body cameras on a New York City police officer.
Yeah, they've recalled hundreds of body cameras in New York because one of them, I don't know if it was the same brand. Were they Axis?
They've been using the same body.
I mean, the cop wasn't hurt, right? We're not going to laugh if the cop was hurt.
No, hopefully he wasn't hurt. Yeah. Look, we haven't heard that there are those problems with the ones that we are using, but I will check with our chief just to be sure that he looks into that.
Bob, you got your ear to the ground, man. I hadn't heard about that Wilbercross.
And my next question is about, and I don't know if you can answer it at all, is about the investigation going on with the assistant fire chief over an incident that happened at the uniform store in West Haven on Friday.
All right, he got arrested, right, for bothering or hitting a clerk or something?
Hitting, actually, yes.
Yeah, that's under investigation, and you would have to speak to Chief Alston about that.
All right, you all good,
And
Bob?
my
Okay.
last question is
Bob's got a lot today.
regarding the election. Do you think you can deliver New Haven for Ned Lamont?
You know what I love
And
about
I'll
that
let you go,
question?
and I'll listen to that.
I wonder, is it up to the mayor to deliver? Like, who delivers the vote in New Haven? Obviously, you endorse Lamont, and that matters. I know that in the past, like, it used to be Democratic Town Committee that delivered the vote. Now, based on whom, and thank you, Bob, for your call as always. Now the candidates tend to negotiate with Unite Here, the union that has, people planted in each of the planted's a loaded word. They've organized ward committees and they deliver the vote, and they seem to be responsible for that 18,000 vote margin. That's the holy grail for statewide candidates. Well, who does deliver the vote? Is that your job, Mayor Hart?
Well, it really isn't my job. I certainly hope that people will take my advice and vote for Ned Lamont. But, it really is the Democratic Town Committee. And there are other interested groups that work in conjunction with the Democratic Town Committee. And so, and there are multiple groups. And so, yes, New Haven Rising, Unite Here do that, but so do other groups. I think for all of us who have been witnessing what's been going on nationally with this sort of new iteration of the Republican Party, really want to make sure that we don't have any of that in Connecticut.
I love the same day the New York Times, which is basically a cheering section, in addition to being a great newspaper, cheering section of the Democratic Party. You had one article in the news section saying it's looking bad for the Republicans. They have all these House races they thought they'd have. They're in trouble in this election. Same day, David Leonhardt, one of their editor people, an op-ed saying it's looking bad for the Democrats. It looks like both houses in the presidency are going for the Republicans. In both cases, it was based on real numbers, real guesses, which brings me back to, I believe, pundits and journalists and pollsters. Our predictions now require 100% margin of error when we tell you how an election is going to go. It used to be 2 or 3 points. I believe the margin of error is now 100.
Well, one of the things that I noticed when I was making phone calls a few weeks ago, it's almost impossible to get anybody. Phone numbers change so fast because of cell phone technology, and people change phones, they change carriers, and you just can't get people like you could years ago.
And attention spans are remarkable because everything that's happened the last 2 months, we try to see in the lens of the election. So what's going to happen with Brett Kavanaugh? How's that going to turn things and end up? One day it was going to help the Democrats, then there was this backlash going to help the Republicans. My theory, again, margin of error 100%, is that, plus or minus, is that no one's going to remember Brett Kavanaugh pretty much for election day, except for very motivated women who are already motivated for a variety of reasons. So one thing I heard, sort of when they're not making public statements from both parties, is that what's emerging as a big factor in the state election this year is white middle-class women in the suburbs who never worked on campaigns before, were not recruited to work in campaigns. And people in places like Guilford are really showing up strong, which might, now they're believing the state Senate's probably going to stay in Democratic hands. We're not sure about the House or the governor's office. I don't know.
Well, I think that, one of the things, and I will just say this is probably going to sound crazy, but women have got to wake up in this country and understand that perhaps women, I think we've talked about this before, the most oppressed group in the nation have always been. It's been a part of our culture, frankly, like going back thousands of years. And so if women really want to have their needs met and be even just the basic thing of controlling their own bodies and having their children supported in schools, the things that are important to women have got to get out there and vote. It's that simple, because you can't count on our needs as women being met by the current system that lets other people vote and make decisions for us.
Speaking of women's right to choose and what happens with their own bodies, I did a triple take editing a story this morning. Then I had to call my reporter back to make sure he got it right, which he did as always. Tom Breen, we looked at the video. Susan Hatfield is a woman running for Attorney General, but she's with the pretty far right of the Republican Party. Trump supporter, worked for Newt Gingrich. Women who are working to get out the vote, the Delta sorority, had a candidate forum in New Haven, and she showed up. Props to Susan Hatfield. William Togg did not show up. Denise Merrill did. And Lamont did. And she was pushed, and she said she supports a woman's right to choose on abortion.
Oh, that's
She said she was
interesting.
pro-choice. That really surprised me because she's even like taking some controversial pro-Trump stands on separation of families with immigration. And I did a triple take. I had to make sure she really said that. It was
Mhm.
like she did when she was here talking about and came here too. I give her credit for like going to territory that isn't friendly. She has a very positive attitude when she campaigns, and she's really on the right, meaning conservative right of
Mhm.
her party. She's not like an old Connecticut Republican in the middle. But she had to be pushed, and she really said she was pro-choice. I wonder what that's about.
Well, hopefully all women are.
Well, they're not.
I
You
know
know
they're
that.
not,
Yeah.
but hopefully they should be if they're thinking.
And hopefully you're thinking that you're listening to Mayor Monday on WNHH because you are. Oh, Molly Wheeler has a question. I forget to look at the YouTube now. That's starting to be used more. I'm finding that when we have, Facebook Live is our main video stream, Mayor Hart.
Mhm.
And as of last week, I noticed when we had the Republican state and Democratic state chairman on, it was a real slugfest. It was good. Except for once I had to turn off the mics, got a little too heated. And I noticed that the liberal comments come on, or left comments come on YouTube, and the conservative comments come on Facebook.
Well, that's
I
interesting.
wonder what that says.
Oh wow.
Well, Molly Wheeler, if Mayor Harp has a moment, would she share the future of the mayor's seat on the Board of Education? It was to be temporary when she first sat in. Actually, I thought the mayor always had a
Well,
seat.
the mayor always had a seat. Yeah.
But now is part of the charter. Because I remember we used to harass John DeStefano because he wasn't attending for a while.
Right.
We took his attendance. Could she share why she thinks it's important to be on the Board of Education? Many city boards of education have no direct mayoral participation. I do believe that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Paul and Mayor Harp for doing Mayor Monday. Thank you, Molly Wheeler, for listening and putting in a very good question. So why should the mayor be on the Board of Ed? Don't you have enough else to do?
Well, I think, look, I think it's really important. It's over half of our budget.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for the mayor to not just hear what the Board of Education or New Haven Public Schools needs in terms of a budget, but to be a part of really observing what is going on throughout the year in New Haven Public Schools. And I think that most mayors, even if they are not on the Board of Education, don't have any impact, are held, this is what I'm hearing across the country, are held accountable for what happens in public schools. And so if I've got to be accountable, then I really need to be there and have a voice.
Okay, and how are things going on the Board of Ed these days?
I think things are going better. I mean, I think we're still a little worried about the budget and finances. One of the things that people don't realize is that for the past 10 years, the educational cost sharing grant has been the same. And it's one thing for it to be the same. It's another thing for the for it to be distributed in the same way that it was 10 years ago, because there have been so many changes. Our school system is now the largest school system in the state. And yet, because that grant has remained the same, we still get the same amount that we got 10 years ago. It's
not even adjusted for inflation.
It's not adjusted for inflation,
wow, so that's a
and
cut.
it's not adjusted for the number of students that you have, so that you'll have a place like ours, like New Haven, that is still getting what it got 10 years ago, but we have like 2,000 or 3,000 more students than we had. And then you have another place that has lost students.
Right, because the state population hasn't grown, has it?
No, it hasn't grown that much, but our population.
Yeah, our population has
has.
grown. We've gone close to 10,000 over the last 20 years.
And so that I think is, if you even
Hampton's
if the
in
money,
that position too.
yeah, even if the money stays the same, the distribution ought to change so that people that need it the most get it. And that's not what's happening, and I'm very disturbed by that. And the other thing that happened in May, not to stop, we're a priority school district, and those funds got cut. They got cut in May. So what does that mean? And the magnet schools, and most of our schools are magnet, they got cut, like in the spring as well. So
so we got real. We had a $19 million deficit when you were starting to deal with it a few months ago,
right?
And we've had to make choices, and the choices aren't: do we get rid of something we don't need and something we do need? Choices are: do we get something we need, or because something we need more?
Right.
And those are tough choices. And I think the priority, if it's fair to say, you said we're going to go first with teachers who are direct contact with students in classes. When we make cuts, that's when we're going to make our priorities. Right. So obviously we then have to cut a lot of stuff that you and I and most people think is so important. It's just not the money for. We had a story about Chris Peak last week. It was really sad. This guy, George Clement, he had a pallet workshop at Riverside. That's an alternative school for kids who haven't succeeded anywhere else. And it was drawing these kids in, and they were repurposing discarded pallets for furniture in restaurants and local businesses and places. And the kids' lives were changing. They were relating to this guy. They all wanted to hang out in there. The teacher said, we can't even keep the kids in our class. They want to go there. And finding some kind of purpose. And there just wasn't money for that anymore. I mean, if you're going to not have the cuts cut the teachers. So he worked without pay for a while. He finally had to feed his family. He took a job with an architecture firm, and Friday was the last day. And our readers were saying, well, why don't we take initiative to raise money privately for that? Where's the Board of the Chamber of Commerce on that? Where is Yale? I agree with that on the one hand, but I also believe that my reporters just happened to find out about this great example. I mean, you talk about reading coaches, you talk about the USTAT programs after work. I mean, you could spend all day finding stuff that we'd like to have that are going to make a deeper impact on kids' lives that we just don't see enough money for.
And so, one of the things, and that's why it's so important that we object when people cut our payment in lieu of taxes. And when we have an ECS line item, maybe it has to stay the same, but it ought to be redistributed to where the need is. And look, we're a poor city. Over 44% of our people who work at the poverty level or below.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a huge number. It's one of the things that we learned at Bank On, which I guess we'll talk about later.
We're going to talk about Bank On, and I'll say what I was going to say for that.
But what is really most important for our state and for our future is to invest in our areas, in the New Havens, the Bridgeports, and we've got to do that. But like what happens up there, because nobody wants to pay taxes. We're running into problems.
I just say, why don't we just raise taxes another 11%?
If
then
we
you'll
had
need
raised
5 bodyguards.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, and we didn't really raise it that much, but the truth of the matter is that when you have a city like ours and like many of the others that are constrained by their geography, and we only have one way to raise revenue, and that is with property taxes. And the state is the size of Los Angeles County. The state has a bigger obligation. It should go across geography through the whole state to raise money for the most populous cities. It just makes no sense that doesn't happen.
But fortunately, the legislature is dominated by suburbs who care deeply about the city and want to make sure that they're paying their fair share for the services we give them, right?
Well, they want to make sure that they don't have to pay more. That's
okay, that's a problem. Because what I'm realizing, remember we were kids growing up, we had pen pals?
Yeah. You think I've got one?
You got a new pen pal. Mayor Harp has somebody she's writing letters to and writing letters to her. It started with him writing letters to her. His name is State Senator Len Fasano. He's in North Haven.
Yeah.
And he's the top elected Republican in the state.
Yes,
he started writing letters when the K2 started, kid. And then
he had lots of ideas.
And then when local media wrote that you were they thought you were spending a few thousand here or there. And so he's been writing you letters. And last week, you and he had another pen pal exchange. He said, Mayor Harp, you're wasting a lot of money, so I want a forensic audit before we give you any more state money. And you wrote back to him. I
did, and I told him, look, when North Haven pays us for the services that we provide to its residents here, we'll think about it. When you pay for the forensic audit, we will think about it. Like he forgets that they send us, I feel like the Statue of Liberty. They send us all of their problems, and we gratefully take them and try to work with people. But it costs us, and they like to forget that when they're in the General Assembly making decisions about who gets resources and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm. So speaking about banking, because you brought this up, and this is very interesting to me. I didn't know 44% you're saying of people who work in New Haven earn poverty wages
or less.
How do we define poverty wages?
Well, I think it's the amount that is set by the government as a poverty level, And so if you make below that, and you can, if you even if you make the minimum wage, and you ultimately won't be able to. Well, it's very difficult for you to make ends meet.
Do we not even add in health insurance costs into that?
Sometimes, but some of these folks don't have health insurance.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So there was a great article in the New York Times Magazine a few weeks ago by Matthew Desmond about how it doesn't pay for a lot of people to work. If they have kids and they have these part-time jobs and their schedules are always variable, so you have to rustle around every week or two or on no notice to get the kids cared for, that they actually lose money sometimes by working, and that earning the minimum wage or a little more, you can't afford to bring up a kid or have rent. And we're moving to a society where getting a job doesn't get you out of poverty. Getting assets has you out of poverty, whether it's a home or saved wealth. So you participated last week at Farnham Court, the new Farnham Court, where I guess people like to have events now because it's so nice. They had the Delta candidate forum there yesterday. And we're starting something called Bank On, a new coalition for the unbanked. Who are the unbanked, and what is the coalition, and what is the effort?
Well, the unbanked are people who can't really afford to have a bank account.
And why can't you? You need a minimum balance?
You need a minimum balance, and you have to pay a certain amount in order to keep the account. There are monthly charges, and so Bank On is a way to. Different banks have created an affordable layer of banking that is accessible to these folks.
It's amazing to cash a check. I remember when someone had done a freelance gig for me, and I gave him a check, and he had to take it to my bank and give up close to a third of the check to have the check cashed and get his money. Because he couldn't afford an account. I thought, that's sick. And then if you have a lot of money, you keep it all.
And you go to these other places that take
the check cashing and then the payday lenders.
Right.
Speaking of the governor's race.
So, and so, it's really difficult for people. So oftentimes they don't even want a check because it costs them so much money. And so.
So this coalition has some new product available?
They've worked with 4 banks to come up with a product specifically for this population.
And then those banks are going to forego the fees?
They're going to have fewer fees, and they're going to be able to get
balances.
They're going to be able to get a debit card and those kinds of things that ultimately will help them maneuver a little better in our current society.
How people find out about that?
They can call our community services organization. They can go to 316 Dixville Avenue. We've been working on it for a number of years.
Is there a website or anything for Bank On?
I think there is. I think it's, what is it, www.bankon?
BANKON? Or just Google Bank On New Haven.
Bank On New Haven. Yeah.
And we had an article about it too, so that should be in there.
Yeah.
So you listen to Mayor Monday at WNHH FM, your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So the big controversy last week was you picked someone to be your chief administrative officer, top level job in front of frontline departments like police, fire, public works, and with a mission to get overtime under control, because we're almost using up the whole overtime budget for police and fire a few months into the year. The Board of Alders has been adamant that we got to get that under control. And under the 2013 charter revision in New Haven, now the Board of Alders gets to vote up or down on your top appointees, the way Congress can for top appointing the president. Mm-hmm. And I believe for the first time ever, they voted someone down. They voted down Sean Madison, who was your choice of the chief administrative officer. What was that all about?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, at first they were concerned because he didn't have a master's degree, but it turned out when our personnel department that can make those decisions about whether or not someone's qualified for a job looked at it, they ascertained that his experience, the work that he has done,
he had been chief of staff under Mayor Stefano,
was adequate to make up for not having that master's degree. So that no longer became a problem. They were upset with me because they said that I didn't go through a process, that I just selected someone.
So they thought everything should be a drawn-out process. I was actually a little bit critical of you, not as in a personal way, of that long process for police and fire chief. It's one of those things where you and I see it differently, and I think you're probably right. I'm not as much of a process person. I kind of feel like take some time to do it right, and maybe just make a decision, then we vote you up or down every 2 years. I've observed with you that you like to bring more people into process to hear more views before you make a decision, be more deliberative. But you're not required to do that, right? John DeStefano used to just pick people.
Right.
He saw Dean Esterman in an airport in 2011 and said, I really just want you to be police chief. I need someone here. No one raised a fuss about that. So is the issue that you're not? They want you to do that with every position?
Well, I don't know. I think it has more. I honestly don't really quite understand it. It seems, he was here for 7 years as the chief of staff. May have had something to do with their relationship with him, and it may have been personal. I just don't know.
Well, there are a lot of theories because, as usual, when the majority of the board of aldermen does something controversial, they don't tell you why. They don't have any public meeting about it, any public discussion. They talk about it for 7 seconds, and then even if you want a roll call vote, they get gangster and they say, no, you can't. So there have been a lot of theories, and I have no idea if any of them are true. One theory is that Sean Madison really knows how things operate in City Hall, and that they would rather have your administration be weaker because the Board of Alders would like more power. And another theory is that if Ned Lamont becomes governor, he might pick Tony Harp to be a state official. He has said that. And then Taisha Walker would be the mayor, and they want to leave it open for her to pick her top people are. Other theories is that he used to work for Unite Here, the union that has the majority on the board, and then he left, and as chief of staff, and then working for a charter organization, he was having to be on the other side of decisions, although it was never true, as far as I could tell, that he ever opposed them. And that this was sort of a way of saying, if you leave us and go the other side, we whack you. And then another theory is it was just saying a way of showing who's in charge. And then another one was just, no one really questioned his qualifications. So I guess you didn't make that decision, but have you talked to them about what to do or what next? Or?
Well, I think that the charter allows him to stay in place for 6 months. I got the signal from them that if he can show he can bring down because that was the other thing, they didn't believe that he had the skills to bring down.
Because he had been in office when it was up before.
Yeah.
But it wasn't his job as chief of staff.
No, it wasn't his job. And so I think that when we show that he can actually do the job for 6 months, we'll resubmit.
So you're planning to keep him in place?
I am.
And one concern people had, if you want to get overtime under control, you have to have authority to do that. People have to believe you're in charge. If he has not been approved for the job and it got kind of a smackdown, is that going to hinder his ability to get overtime under control?
Well, I think that he'll be able to get it under control because I've given him the authority. If people have a problem with it who have to do that, they will have to deal with me.
Oh, I don't think I want to do that. I'll deal with your CAO. I don't have to deal with you on that. Except to remind people that they're listening to Mayor Monday, WNHH 103.5 FM. You were at school management last week, a Connecticut Innovations event. What was going on there?
It was a venture. It was a venture kind of experience. They had about 9 companies that were looking to get all or a portion of about $5 million to start their companies, and so they were making presentations.
Was it a competition?
It was a competition.
And was there money for the winners?
Yes.
And what was your role there?
I just went to say, welcome to New Haven.
The innovation thing is going crazy. I mean, in a good way.
Yeah.
District is amazing. That's
that
place in where you guys you made a decision at the time, which was controversial, not to go with an out-of-town developer with a big bank account, a lot of track record in real estate from New York, who wanted to put a supermarket there by the 91 on James Street and an old Connecticut bus depot. You made the decision to have homegrown entrepreneurs who were succeeding to put together a team to build jobs of the future high-tech campus there. It opened in February. It's already 75% full. There was a tour last week. And the reason it's not 100 is that more than 100% worth is in demand, and they want to pick the right mix. They've been saying no to law firms, except for the law firm Martha Kalina, that wanted to open a practice specifically to work with the companies getting started in this incubator. It's going to have all this wild stuff like a canoe launch and a brewery, restaurant, and it was just a very optimistic tour for some alders and the press. And it's happened so fast and so successfully. And the point David Salinas, who led that tour, made was that if you listen to everybody in the governor's race, they say Connecticut's in trouble, businesses are leaving, GE. In fact, from his perspective, great things are happening, and that businesses want to come here, and they are coming here. And then instead of saying business is leaving, so you have to cut taxes, he believes you have to think about how we're going to fill the talent needed for all these jobs that are opening up and all the engineers, to which point they've attracted a few $1 million of venture capital from Silicon Valley to open up a training school for adults in engineering jobs. So who's right? Is it gloom and doom in Connecticut, or are we at a better day?
Well, I think it depends upon where you look in Connecticut.
New
If you-
Haven.
If you look here and in our region, you will see that Connecticut is booming. It's not booming all over the state, and I think that's the problem.
Mhm.
But it is absolutely booming here, and I'm really proud of David and his team for the work that they've
I thought
done.
it was a good decision to
Yep.
go with promising tech entrepreneurs in town,
Right.
focused on jobs of the future. It was a risk.
It was, but when you look at what's going on everywhere else that is booming, they all have something like this. So
And meanwhile, the
Uh-huh.
guy who wanted it from New York showed his true colors when he didn't get it by just trashing his other properties he already had in town.
I know.
So maybe do
Oh,
want the whole
well.
person. Because as you said, if they're in town, then they have to deal with the mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. Just saying. It's a new day as well for the Yale police, assuming, and I think it's a good assumption, that they're going to approve a new contract. They were without a contract for a couple of years, and they got a new pact with the university. They're happy. They protect their health care. They're going to be among the highest paid cops in the state. Once it takes place, 3% raises over 7 years every year.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your police force has been without a contract, and you're in arbitration right now. And you don't have a $29 billion endowment that Yale has.
You notice that?
Yes. So you can't just give them 3% raises every year and keep their health benefits the way they are and still pay the bills. On the other hand, we're losing cops because we pay less than the suburbs. The other departments come see who's new, trained at our academy.
They lick their chops. They can't wait for us to train them.
So what's the answer?
Well, I think that we are going to have to look at improving their salaries somewhat. I know that we're in arbitration and we're going to be looking at those things. Look, they had a few jobs available at Yale, and over 100 of our officers applied.
Really, over 100?
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Wow.
And so it's
Even though they got to deal with like Yaleys who feel superior to them all the time.
oh yeah, they don't mind. Especially the younger officers. They don't mind at all.
Wow. So the question is then, where's the money come from? I mean, some people suggested a smaller police force.
Right? I know.
But that means fewer walking beats, which you feel are central to community policing.
Well, it's not. They are central to community policing, but they're also central to safety.
Yeah.
Because community policing and safety are related.
So how are we going to afford to give them big raises?
Well, I don't know if they're going to get big raises, but hopefully they'll get enough to keep them here for 25 years.
So we work within the possible.
Yes.
And often that gets us through just fine because we're allowed to offer in New Haven too, including really interesting police work.
I think that it's different, like the kind of overtime again, and we're trying to get it down, but and the dollars that they make on private detail work, they end up making something similar to what an officer.
They get more private detail work.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is that option that you don't have in every single.
But you have to work more hours then.
You do have to work more hours, but it's kind of up to you.
You get to hear the bands.
You get to hear the bands. You get to watch the various games.
You get to
that are
watch the
happening.
tennis if we continue to have tennis in New
Wouldn't that
Haven.
be
Are we going to
great?
continue to have tennis in New
I
Haven?
hope we are.
They say that they're without a sponsor in a few weeks and decide whether they can go forward with it.
I'm hoping that we'll find a way to keep tennis.
Did I
here.
bring this up last time in the
You
year? I think I
did,
did
yeah.
about how the idea of selling it to someone private to run the tournament and pay the city. I was thinking, what if you got someone private to buy that stadium? Although
Mhm.
they'd have to pay the state, not the city, right? Who owns it?
I believe I don't know. I don't know who owns it.
Because if we can get the money, we could put some of that money into paying down our pensions and bolstering our rainy day fund and have them pay taxes on it.
Well, and the taxes, the ongoing revenue would be really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not usually a privatizer. I'm usually a believer that that's often an excuse to get wealthy people and companies more at the expense of paying people enough. I'm not sure that's the case with the tennis stadium. I actually believe a private, and we spoke about this last week, put a roof on it, get concerts, have someone private run the tournament and maybe change what week it is or whatever, and get it on the tax rolls and more concerts. I think that could, and more police overtime.
Yeah. No, I think that it's certainly not off the table.
Okay, so maybe if you and I run the world, let's just make that happen. You do run the city. You got some private lines to people. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the Floyd Little Field House. Last Wednesday, you were there at an event organized by the Office of the Child Advocate, and we didn't make it to that one. What was going on there?
Well, I didn't make it either, but I'll tell you what it was about. it was really trying to help all of our educators understand and see the world through the eyes of the child advocate. Oftentimes we ask the question, like, is this a DCF issue?
Department of Children and Families when a kid's in trouble.
When a kid's in trouble, or is it, and that is one measure, but then there's also the Office of Child Advocate that has another measure. And if we sort of run into their crosshairs, it can cost our city a lot of money. Okay. And Hartford has had that experience, and they're paying over $500,000. Wow. And so it's really important. It was really more of a workshop so that our educators could be informed around how it is you work with young people and make sure that their rights are not violated.
Last week's one of the fun events was in City Hall. We had a goodbye party for Patty Lawler, 59 years in city government.
My goodness.
It was in the atrium. A lot of people used to work for government, still do, came to say goodbye to someone who kind of knows how it works behind the scenes, never got credit before, but did when she left. What was your favorite moment in that event?
I loved when she was serenaded.
Oh, I was going to say that was my favorite moment, too. That was hilarious. So all the politicians spoke, and then they got some crooner who had like the recording of the big band, Sinatra type thing, and then crooned a love song right to Patty. Right there. That was very sweet.
That was sweet. I thought I thought he made the event. I was really happy.
Yeah, that was really sweet.
He was there.
And it was very, I love the contrast between the way city events used to work and now. So Mayor DeStefano was there, and when he wanted to pay tribute to Patty, when he spoke, it reminded me what it was like to go to 20 years of Mayor DeStefano. He was a lot of energy, a lot of jokes, a lot of it was about him. And then Taisha Walker gets up, President Board, and says, I don't come here and make a lot of jokes. And she didn't really talk about herself, just talk about Patty, just get down to business. And you seem to be very focused, I guess he would in a different way, and how this was all working to benefit Patty. You didn't really talk about Tony Harp at all. It was a lot lower key. And I really don't mean this as saying one's better than the other. It just reminded how exhausted I was after 20 years of some of these events and how I'm really not exhausted anymore. It's just different styles. I think they're both legitimate. Because, Stefano brings a lot of energy and fun in his show, and it's about him. But he thinks about how to make the point.
Yeah, he does. I loved his story. It was very graphic and, and very interesting. I think you really understood Patty based upon his story. And, yes, there was some of him in it as well. But he was the mayor.
Yeah. But I remember like when John Rowland, the governor, would come and everyone would wait at the event, whether it was 500 people at Chamber of Commerce in the Omni or groundbreaking, for how they were going to make jokes insulting the other. It's just a very different kind of dynamic. You don't do that kind of guy thing when you have like the commissioner of addiction services come to town. Okay, 2 big events coming up this week before we leave. Comer Development. James Comer, psychologist at Yale, child psychologist, came up with 2 big concepts in New Haven over his career, among much other good work. One was community schools, and the bigger thing was Comer method of dealing with social problems kids bring into schools. Pioneer of social emotional development, dealing with that in school so people can learn well. Conference on Tuesday, gala Monday night. You heading over there? Any thoughts?
Yeah, we're heading over there, and we're giving him a star. We're going to put it on the sidewalk over there somewhere.
Wait, a star?
A star, like they have in Hollywood.
Oh, where's it going to be?
I don't know exactly where we're going to put it, but I think it's going to be close to the Yale Child Study. It's going to be in the sidewalk.
All right, good move.
We're excited.
And I assume that you've been to the dry cleaners.
What's this about?
The dress-up event of the year. He knows what I'm talking about. Black and Hispanic Caucus, which I think is a great event. But people like me really can't show up because we can't dress. This is going to be Anthony's Ocean of View fundraising event. Tom Breen and Lucy are going. Marquise usually goes because she can dress, but she can be out of town. But we'll be there with Tom Breen and Lucy Gelman. That's a big fundraiser, but it's kind of like sort of the political event of the year, right?
Yeah, it's like a scholarship fundraiser, so that's really great.
And people get along.
Yeah, they get along for that evening. But there's one other thing that's happening on Tuesday. I just wanted to promote, and it's a program on human trafficking.
Oh.
It's going to be at Hamden High School. I think it starts at 6 o'clock. I would invite everybody to come, especially if you have teenage girls. You've got to hear about human trafficking and how it could impact their lives.
All right. Who's putting that on? Is that Love 146? It's going
to be put on by... they're going to be there, but it's put on by the links of Waterbury, New Haven, and Milford.
Great organization.
Yeah.
All right. Mayor Harp, thank you very much for that. For the 911. It's a 411. Not the 911.
Yeah, I
No, we don't want
know
the
what it is.
911.
Maybe it's the 211.
But definitely not the 911.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mayor Harp. Thanks
you.
everyone for listening. Thanks for questions. And thanks to Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. We're going to take it out as usual with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. We know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.